Miami Condo Mondays is a live podcast on the first workday of the week at 4 p.m. South Florida time. The program features former journalist and current Wall Street consultant Peter Zaleski of the Miami Condo Investing Club and former lender and veteran condo broker Jenny Huertas of CVRRealty.com. Recorded weekly in greater downtown Miami, this one-hour discussion will provide a refreshing and sometimes controversial perspective on the state of the South Florida condo market from a pair of seasoned real estate professionals who do not always agree. The program won't tell you what to think about the South Florida condo market, but will give you something to think about before buying, selling, taking listings, or financing units. This podcast is not authorized by the Miami real estate industry and will quite possibly annoy many of its figureheads. Welcome to this week's episode of Miami Condo Mondays, broadcast live on the social media accounts of Peter Zaleski and Jenny Huertas. Happy Monday, Miami. This is Peter Zaleski. I'm a condo consultant. I'm also the founder of the Miami Condo Investing Club. Check out the website, miamicondo.club. It's Monday. That means we are doing our Miami Condo Monday podcast. It's a one-hour discussion between myself and my co-host, my partner. She's a broker owner of CVR Realty. Her name is Jenny Huertas. Check out her website at cvrrealty.com. What are we talking about today? We are going to be talking about a pivot that's being hinted by the Federal Reserve, which means mortgage rates may finally be coming down. A lot of people in the real estate industry have been begging, they've been pleading for lower mortgage rates. And it looks like we are on the cusp, roughly about 3 weeks out from lower mortgage rates. So says Jerome Powell, the chairman of the Federal Reserve, at a meeting last week. But I don't want to get ahead of myself. Let me go ahead and bring in my co-host, Jenny Huertas, CVRRealty.com. What's up, Jenny? How's it going?
Hey, Peter. Happy Monday. How are you? I'm great.
I'm
Happy to be here.
Yeah, I'm happy to have you here. We're going to have a fun conversation. This could be the moment that a lot of people have been sort of hoping for, begging for. They say if you suddenly get low interest rates, now suddenly the real estate market, which is swamped with supply over a year of supply, more than 12 months, typically 6 months is equilibrium. Jenny, this could be the moment that everybody's been, hoping and wishing for. What's sort of your initial reaction to that? We're going to go ahead and get in some of the details, but do we need lower interest rates? Is that what will trigger a resurgence in this stagnant, sluggish, disappointing, lackluster condo market that is South Florida?
Yes, I mean, that would help. I'm not sure what percentage is going down. In order to make a real difference, we need at least 2 points. I mean, half a point is not going to do it. And a combination with better prices that we already seeing, people like really, the prices are correcting as far as I can see. So yeah, that would help definitely.
Awesome. Jenny, we're going to get into all that over the course of the next hour. And then at the end, I'm going to ask you, are you a bull? Are you a bear? Or are you still standing on the sidelines like you have for most of this summer? So why don't we go ahead and get into it? Jenny, let me kind of lay out the scenario of kind of where we stand. So if you remember back during 2019, 2020, the winter buying season, which went from November through April, a lot of excitement going on here. The market was somewhat stagnant, but was holding firm. And then the Super Bowl's hosted here in Miami, Kansas City Chiefs playing out there at Hard Rock Stadium. Fantastic Super Bowl, exciting. And a couple weeks later, there's an announcement that there's a pandemic. Once the pandemic happens, international passenger traffic at Miami International plummets, falls off the cliff, if you will. The country as well as the world is put on lockdown. Everybody's searching for a pandemic. You're getting something mailed to you and from Amazon, maybe a delivery. You're afraid to bring it in the house. You leave it outside. You're washing the packaging. You're going through all that type of stuff. Everybody's fighting for masks. Then we all want vaccines. Vaccines ultimately come about 2021. There's this pushback against wearing a mask. State of Florida takes an aggressive approach and says, we don't need no stinking masks. Come on down to Florida. We are open for business. And Miami Beach says if you are into twerking on police cars, go ahead and get up on one of our squad cars and start twerking away. Next thing you know, condo sales go through the roof. Passenger traffic at Miami International Airport, domestic as well as, well, mostly domestic, it spikes. Miami is the place to be. The mayor of Miami, a gentleman called Francis Suarez, he's taking out billboards in San Francisco saying, hey, Silicon Valley types, get the hell out of California. We're on lockdown. Come on down to Miami. You don't have to wear a mask, and we are open for business. Next thing you know, all the tech bros and the crypto bros and everybody else rolls into town. That same Mayor Francis Suarez, he then goes out and gets into a little bit of a pitching match with the mayor of New York City. And they are both competing to see who is going to be the crypto capital of the world. Now, while all this is going on, Federal Reserve Chairman Jerome Powell, let's call him Old Man Powell just for conversation. Old Man Powell moves to cut interest rates, takes them down to zero, nothing. Doesn't cost you anything to get your hands on cash effectively. Well, actually costs you something, but let's just keep it simple. So he brings the rates down to zero, and we sit there for quite some time. The United States government decides, listen, we don't know if any people are going to have jobs or not. Restaurants, how are they surviving? They come up with PPP money, if you remember that. They start handing out checks. Everybody's getting checks 500, 1,500 across the board. We run up our deficit to extremely high levels. And then what happens? Well, everybody's sitting at home. They're doing the so-called work from home. If you're fortunate or unfortunate to be in one of those states where you don't have to wear a mask, you come here, you buy a condo, you rent a place, and you got plenty of cash because you're working from home. You don't no longer have the expense of having to get in the train and drive the car and pay for the valet and the parking tickets, going out to lunch. Nobody wants any of it. And there's this huge demand and not enough supply because we don't have enough workers. We at one point get the essential workers. These are the workers who are out there doing all the necessary stuff, including, which is the primary focus, delivering food. DoorDash pops up, Uber pops up, all these different apps are all around here. So, too much demand, not enough supply of anything or everything, and interest rates are low. Fast forward to where we are today. Interest rates now stand at 4.5%. They were reduced last year. The last time there was a movement against interest rates was in December, bringing it down to roughly about 4.5%. This is the rate that it's like the wholesale rate. This is like what the central bank charges to a bank to borrow money on a short-term basis, typically overnight or something else. So, what does all that mean? Well, what it means is the easy way to look at it is, there's a rating, or excuse me, there's a rate that they put out. It's called the 10-year Treasury. And typically, if you want to know the mortgage, you put 3 points on top of the 10-year Treasury, and that is what your mortgage rate is going to be. 3 points is the spread, the junk fee, the everything that the bank's making off of lending out the money. And then if the bank needed to borrow money, it would cost them whatever was that 10-year Treasury. Effectively, just kind of keep it real simple. So we've been at a point now where, Jenny, at one time, and I think you bought a place, and I don't know if you want to share it or not, but there was one time when people were getting their hands on mortgages that were south of 5%, some in the 2, some in the 1, some in the 3% range. Now today, if you go to get a mortgage, you're looking at probably a 7 handle. So it begins with a 7, not that 3, not that 2, not that 1 that other people have gotten. And what we found is we have people looking to sell their condos, and people who want to buy condos. They might think the current pricing is a little bit too high, but even if they could somehow make the current pricing work, the financing in their minds is going to kill them because it starts with a 7 handle, 7% interest on your debt annually, which means quite a bit. So there's been a lot of talk on Wall Street that if you really want to jumpstart this housing market, again, more than 12 months throughout the South Florida area, Miami-Dade County, somewhere in the ballpark of about 16 months, you get into like greater downtown Miami for condos, you're looking north of 20 months of supply. So there's a lot of supply. Remember, equilibrium is 6 months. So that's kind of where we are today. Jenny, fill in some of the blanks maybe before we get to Jerome Powell's speech that occurred on Friday. Fill in some of the blanks. Am I missing anything in the overview story about how we were afraid, then we all were starting to feel positive and somewhat optimistic. We got a vaccine. You don't have to wear a mask. Government sending us out all kinds of checks. Amazon delivery workers are bringing stuff 2, 3, 4, 6 times a day. Am I missing anything up until that point?
No, that is very good, very fast too. I'm not sure if people can hear you fast enough.
Listen faster, right? That's what
It's-
Teresa Kinney
yeah.
from the Miami Association of Realtors used to tell the audience before I got on stage.
Yeah, because everyone say, "Hey, Peter, can you please speak slower?" No, no, no. Just listen faster. But yes, that's what the perfect storm was, and I was lucky enough to secure a mortgage for 3.2%, which means the last debt that you want to pay is your mortgage. I mean, you pay it, but you don't want to pay it off. And at the time, the prices were super attractive. But 6 months later, the prices went crazy. I was surprised as well when those 6 months passed by. I couldn't believe that the price of my condo had spiked in such a way, and that's when this stuff became more expensive. But since the interest rates still were decent, people were able to qualify. Remember, when you get a loan, when you get a loan and the rate is 3%, it's different. You like get it for 7% because now you have to qualify, not just to qualify, but to carry your property. So, for example, somebody buying a place with my same situation, that would be paying double, if not more, every month just for the mortgage. And even if the price is attractive, they still pay double. But yes, that would be definitely something that should ignite some activity. Let's see what is the percentage, because you know more than me in these economical scenarios how this works. Can you tell me a little bit about it?
Yep. We're getting there. Hold on, slow down. We're getting there. So, the scenario I laid out basically had a lot of people come here to South Florida, and they all started saying, if you listen to a lot of sell side brokers, what they were saying is, oh my God, Miami's so cheap compared to San Francisco, so cheap compared to New York, so cheap compared to Milan, Monaco, Singapore, Hong Kong, London. Miami was cheap, and therefore people felt as if, hey, listen, this is a great deal. I can live in this beautiful climate, and I can also too buy property that I think is undervalued based on where I
Mhm.
come from, and then I'm going to get a tax break, and I could torque on a police car. So that was a lot of the stuff that we had going on during the pandemic in the Federal Reserve. This is the central bank of the United States. So it's headed by a guy called Jerome Powell. Again, old man Powell, so I'm going to refer to him. So, they made some missteps along the way. If you remember when inflation was spiking, inflation at one point was like over 9%. Compared today to we're coming in about 2.7, 2.8% ballpark figure or so. So inflation was, north of 9%. And at this time, they were using a term that you probably remember. It's called transitory. Transitory, meaning it's here, but it's going to disappear. It's kind of like a short term, it's like a one night stand, if you will.
Mhm.
It's going to happen, and then it's sort of gone. So that was the big talking point. That's what was going on, but it didn't leave. And because the inflation did not leave, and inflation ultimately is a kryptonite for every central bank, because if you don't have price stability, it creates all kinds of confusion. I mean, it actually adds to your appreciation in your real estate, but it also adds to how much everything costs, whether it is a bag of
Mhm.
chips or it's gas or it's anything like that. So these are some of the issues. That was one of the issues. Transitory. Inflation is going to pull back. And the central bank, the Federal Reserve, one the same. Old man Powell's the guy who runs it. This is the one that President Trump is trying to get out, threatening to fire if he doesn't cut interest rates. Remember, I don't know if you remember that, Jenny, but he actually did that in President Trump's first term. The condo market down here in South Florida was going sideways. We were anticipating there was going to be a long required or necessary correction. And then President Trump started jawboning Old Man Powell. Old Man Powell, who was appointed by President Trump, he bent the knee and he cut rates. And lo and behold, the condo cleanup we should have had down here in South Florida back in like 2018 or so, it never actually materialized because
Mhm.
there was this life support system provided by a reduction in interest rates. And just to keep everybody kind of on the same page, when interest rates go up, housing goes down. When interest rates go down, housing goes up. So it's a teeter totter. So when you hear
Right.
about interest rates going up, that means housing slowing down. If you hear about interest rates going down, that means housing's going up. So that's kind of sort of the background. That's some of the backstory that's been going on. So effectively, the Federal Reserve started to raise interest rates. Again, this is the rate. It's called the federal funds rate. This is the rate that they charge to another bank to borrow money. And then the bank will put a spread on top of it for a mortgage called 3%, roughly. So Federal Reserve starts raising rates. Some of the ballpark memory serves me correct. Some of the ballpark like late 2022, early 2023, and they put a whole series of rates, taking up the federal funds rate to north of 5%. I want to say
Yeah.
5.5%. And then you say, okay, well, it's not the 10-year treasury, but for our conversation, let's add 3 points to that 5.5%. And now we're talking 8.5% mortgage rate. A lot of people said, whoa, I can't afford that. I mean, Jenny, you just
Right.
said your mortgage rate is somewhere in the ballpark of 3.5, somewhere right there. You imagine if the mortgage rates on the street were triple what you were actually
Yeah.
paying? I
No.
mean, two
No.
things would happen. One thing would happen, you're like, I'm not moving, because if I move, even if I buy the same place with the same deposit, my monthly burn or cost related to the interest rate is going to be 3 times as much, because I'm going from
Right.
3% to 9% or 8.5%. So it became cost prohibitive. And then,
Yes, absolutely.
and then the other reason maybe you don't want to move is maybe it's a little bit more challenging also to get to get financing. Banks tend to take positions, and based on sort of what's the outlook? Can this money be repaid? Can the product be sold if necessary?
Hmm.
So it kind of changes the overall perspective about how lenders actually look at some of this product, especially condos that have a history in
Yeah.
South Florida of volatility and ups and downs and ups, and just kind of all across the board.
Yes, absolutely. This is true. Imagine if when the prices went up, I was like tempted. I say, maybe I should sell my place. But then I say, okay, what I do with this money, where I go to live, whatever I let go this amazing mortgage rate and now paying 8% for another mortgage, it doesn't make any sense.
Yep.
So a lot of people, I I do know a lot of people in the situation where they didn't move just because the conditions were completely different now, regardless of the price. I mean, even that's the perfect storm for stagnation, is that the rates were up and the prices up as well. So nothing nothing will happen. But see how this news that this news of the lower rates are taken by the banks, and because if you ask me, I've seen a lot of banks taking no banks, mortgage companies, like lowering the rates, lower than what is supposed to be. So that might be a good thing for the people that is holding off for so many years, like they're waiting for a while
Yep.
to buy. And also the amount of inventory is gonna help as well to find a place.
So, um, we were in a position where once Jerome Powell, Federal Reserve, starts raising rates, him and there's a board called the FOMC, the Federal Open Market Committee. They're the ones
Hmm.
that get together. I think it's 11 times a year, 10 times a year, and they make a decision. And based on their decision, their vote, that's kind of what happens with this federal funds rate. This is the rate, again, that the central bank
Hmm.
charges to banks to borrow money on a short-term basis, but it has repercussions all sort of across the board. Now this Federal Reserve, it's got two mandates. It's got two responsibilities. One is inflation. Keep inflation under 2%. That is the mandate that's been set up. So when inflation was at 9%, they were way out of whack. They had to have it below
Yeah.
2%. And then the other part is have maximum employment. You want everybody who wants a job can get a job, or can get into one relatively quickly. That's sort of
Right.
the two focuses that the central bank had. So for the longest time, people were trying to work 2 and 3 jobs from home. Some of them are
Hmm.
running hustles. Employers needed employees, so you had all kinds of situations. You have situations where I've seen reports where people out of North Korea are using AI to kind of affect their appearance so they can go ahead and try to get a job claiming that they're a local and all this type of stuff. So it's just there were not enough employees.